Okay, so before I get started, this is going to be a fairly serious talk, and we're going to be covering some pretty dark subjects. And honestly, if anybody's uncomfortable and just wants to kind of leave, take it, I will not be offended, and nothing be thought of it. But it's a serious subject, and it's something that I think we could all do with talking a little bit more about. So, as way of introduction, I'm Stephen Midgley, and I've been a lead technical architect for about 15 years now. I have a specialism in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and in particular using and leveraging those tools to fix large, old, broken systems for typically Fortune 100 companies. However, last year I took some time off after my mum had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And during that time, I discovered she was in a controlling and coercive relationship with my now deceased stepdad. My talk today is going to be on the AI tools I developed during and after this time, and to navigate our domestic abuse systems. Before I get started though, Surrey Police requested that I show you this following statement, so I'm going to just put it up there so we can all read that. It's a lot of words. So, towards the end of her life, Mum wanted her experience to be told, to help others understand what is a very dark subject. And this is why we started a project called Budgie Girl. It's an interactive novel which we hoped would help spread awareness of this dark subject. Unfortunately, Mum died before we could complete all the interviews. In time, I'm hoping to reach out to other survivors so we can kind of fill in those gaps. However, and as this presentation isn't actually about Budgie Girl, I think the trailer is very useful to understand some of the context of domestic abuse and some misconceptions and the challenges that victims face.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I like ice skating, bowling, and I love looking after my budgie birds. You know, typical girl stuff. My story is a normal one, I think. I met a boy, his jokes were funny, I laughed when he teased me, cute and charismatic. He seemed too good to be true. Pretty soon, I quit my job so I could help him build up his company. We were a team. The business started booming, so we built our life together, always together. We traveled the world and had many great adventures. We even bought a big, dreamy house in the countryside. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not always been easy. I've worked hard, doing his accounts, looking after the house, keeping him well-fed, happy, comfortable. And I've been sick recently. Anyway, I've always been strong. I've made sure to put hot meals on the table. I've made the numbers make sense. In fact, you'll always see me with a smile on my face because I am happy. I can still play cards with my friends, watch my favorite movies, and look after my beautiful budgie birds. Bliss, right? But I do wonder, what if things could have been different? What if I could have seen the signs? What if I didn't laugh at his jokes at my expense? What if I spotted his over-the-top drinking? What if I had someone I could talk to when the numbers didn't add up and we were spending more than we could, more than we should? What if instead of always smiling and showing my teeth, I showed the bruises instead? What if we hadn't brought that damn, dreamy house in the countryside, away from everybody, my friends, my family, my lifelines. What if I was able to say, I'm fucking sick, and see a doctor in time? Could we have caught this big illness earlier? What if I ran into the police and they actually helped me? What if there was a place to stay after all those times I tried to leave and tried to leave and tried to leave? What if I had someone to take care of me like I do my budgie birds, with warmth and love, with encouragement to sing if I have a song, and not clipping my wings? I am happier now. But could I have gotten here sooner? I don't know. I went through a lot, and nobody deserves it. My story is a normal one, I think, but it shouldn't be. I wanted to tell you my story, so it doesn't become your story.
So much of domestic abuse is hidden from sight. I failed to spot my own mum's abuse for 30 years. I'll explain later that there's also strong evidence that as much as 2/3 of domestic abuse reports are effectively ignored by some authorities. And behind these numbers, I believe there is untold and completely avoidable suffering. I'd like to share a short video extract from my mum, as I think it's important to hear about the experience of being a survivor directly.
One of the worst occasions was when his brother died, Tony, and we'd been at the scattering of Tony's ashes. Derek was obviously full of grief. He had far too much to drink on that occasion. And when we got home, he literally pinned me up against the wall in the bathroom and thumped me in the face and in the ribs, in my chest and my ribs. And I was really badly bruised, but that was all before the days of mobile phones. So I never even thought to take photographs of my black eyes. And he just, the more sick he got, the more he avoided the issue that there was something seriously wrong.
That sounds very difficult for you, especially with your own diagnosis.
And also, by then I was going through my problems, of which he delayed my diagnosis, because every time I mentioned that I thought there was something wrong with me, he would say I was exaggerating, and I was just imagining that things were going wrong. Unfortunately, I knew I was ill at Christmas. By mid-March, or about end of March, I got a bowel cancer testing kit, which I sent off the same day. Derek also received one. His went straight in the bin. And then the very, very last straw was the morning I left, he came in, I was lying in bed, and he came at me with a clenched fist. He was gonna thump me. Wow. Definitely, his temper was off the scale. And I faced him and said, well, hit me, because if you do, and I get a bruise, I'm gonna photograph it, and I'll put it on Facebook, and everybody we know will know that you hit me, because there'll be no hiding it. I'm not gonna hide it anymore. You're aggressive and abusive. And at that point, he left the room still in a temper. And whilst he was in the office, I just put a few things in a bag and left.
Right.
And what's disappointed me since then, that happened on the 10th of August. I've never been allowed back home to collect any of my belongings. So he's forced me into unnecessary expenditure. I did fortunately have savings in my own name, so I came away and was able to sort of fund myself till the present day. But all the savings money has gone because of lawyers, and we had to get solicitors involved.
So I'm going to share with you my experience of using AI to help navigate a very complicated and broken system. So as you can tell, in June last year, I raised concerns after finding Mum severely malnourished. She hadn't eaten in 5 days. She had sepsis. She had been forced to care for my stepfather against medical advice, and her passports had been stolen in an effort to stop her from setting up a power of attorney. To my surprise, a few days later, this case was closed, and I was told this was not a criminal matter. Over the next month, things became much more tense at my mum's home, and she finally found the courage to leave the place she'd been living in for 25 years with just that hastily gathered plastic bag of stuff and the car. And together we started to rebuild her life from scratch, all while she was going through stage 4 cancer treatment. Now, those months were the most stressful but most fulfilling months of my life. I reconnected with my mum from childhood, I remember from childhood, funny, intelligent, and with an amazing sense of music. But all at the same time, we kept on being told by the police that this was not a criminal matter, and we had to go through civil routes in order to get Mum's personal items. You see, in the UK, if you leave your home, you, in effect, can have less practical rights to get access to your home, to get personal items, even if you're a domestic abuse victim, because you run the risk of infringing on the abuser's human rights. So basically, I became Mum's full-time carer, and I tried to handle as many of the legal, police, and social care interactions as possible, so she could focus on her health and spending meaningful time with her friends and family. I requested that the police and social care assisted multiple times, but I kept on to being told that this was not a criminal matter and it was a civil case. Now, after 5 months and about £25,000 of legal fees, we had made no progress in getting any of Mum's items. We had to rebuild her entire life from scratch. We bought her all her new clothes, medical and care equipment, and we even furnished a new retirement home for her. And this is all despite the fact that using the civil legal system is a recognised tactic for abusers to abuse their victims. In January this year, we actually found out that my stepdad had died just 5 months after my mum had left. And legally, that changed everything. After, let's call them some minor setbacks, including armed police being sent to my mum's retirement house, we finally gained access to the home. Mum discovered that £40,000 of valuables had been taken. I reported this again to the police and was told once again that this was not a criminal matter, even though Mum's lawyers were clear at the time that it could no longer be a family court matter. Unfortunately, the stress took a terrible toll on Mum. She stopped eating, had a fall, moved to hospice, and on the 21st of March this year, she died, about 1.5 years earlier than was originally predicted. I was, and still am, angry, upset, and very confused. How could a stage 4 cancer patient be denied safeguarding? How could someone leave their home with just a plastic bag, and even after £25,000 of legal fees, basically have no right or route to justice, even with someone like me acting as their full-time advocate? You see, as I mentioned, before all this, my trade was in system architecture, fixing large broken systems. I've worked with big organisations, banks, satellite systems, healthcare, telecoms, you name them, I've been in. I'm very good at navigating big systems. But in the end, the domestic abuse help system beat me. So I wanted answers. I wanted to know what went wrong, and I wanted to see if there was anything that I could do which might help victims that were facing similar situations. You see, what people might be surprised about is there's no single contact for domestic abuse victims. You get bounced around between healthcare, MPs, police, lawyers, citizen advice, multiple charities. It's an absolute minefield, a very broken system. Now, as system architects, we often use what's known as the tracer bullet method. This is where we walk a full path to an outcome. Slowly, deliberately, we follow every single process step. We notice what's unclear and what can be improved with either documentation and tooling. And wherever possible, we build that documentation and tooling as we go along. In my mum's case, I knew her timeline had ended and she wasn't going to get justice. But I could still walk that path and document the steps it would take, and hopefully build some tools along the way that might help others. So, during Mum's care, I had sent hundreds of emails, collected loads of evidence, audio, video, recordings of Mum, photos of medical records and police logs. But they're all disparate and scattered. So the first thing I did is I built some simple tools to ingest and organize everything. Transcripts, audios, archives, etc. And I converted them into a very easy-to-use format, Markdown for those that are interested. And I used that so I could provide context to whatever I did in the next steps. With that context assembled, I used LLM agents to create a structured event log of what happened. In essence, change these range of documents into like an Excel type format. Once again, the point was context, because while I knew all the points of my mum's case intimately, it's very hard when you're talking to a professional who doesn't know your own individual case to get the salient points up at the right time. Next up, to understand what went wrong in my mum's case, I went around and I gathered all the policies regarding domestic abuse and guidance, from policing, Crown Prosecution Service, various training materials and social care guidelines. Now, I did put them all together, and they are literally over the size of Crime and Punishment. Now, expecting any responder or indeed victim to internalize all this is just not realistic. So the first thing I did was create this policy checking application. The idea here is you put in a policy and you put in some evidence, and then you can supply some context documents, which are optional. And I designed the output to be what I call going biblical, which is, quote, chapter and verse. So what this tool does, it quotes the exact line of the policy that might have been broken and puts the corresponding line of evidence to say this is where the suggestion it's been evidenced. And because it's an exact line, I can then check that the quotes are available in the original documents, so I can be confident there's no hallucinations. Then there's some slight sort of explanation text, which explains why the two go together. So it's a nice testable system. Now, the first thing I did was I put Surrey Police's domestic abuse policy into the policy checker and ran it against my mum's police logs. And I knew that things had gone wrong, but I didn't realise the extent. And there were two parts of the output that hurt to read. The first is this: recovery of property. The policy says that victims of domestic abuse have the right to an escorted return for essential items. Now, Mum spent tens of thousands of pounds on lawyers trying to achieve this very result via the legal system. And yet her right was right there in black and white. And I do wonder, just when instead I asked for help and asked for a police escort and was being denied, what would have happened if I was able to quote this specific line of policy at the right time? Could things have been different? The second extract was this one, and it was a puzzler. The case was closed as domestic abuse non-crime. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell you all this. Domestic abuse is a crime. It's an umbrella term for a suite of different crimes. But there is a concept called non-crime. Without breaching any legal constraints, I can say there were very clear criminal-sounding elements. For example, taking someone's identity passports to control them aligns with controlling and coercive behaviour of the 2015 Serious Crimes Act. You see, in the UK, domestic abuse crimes should at least be reported to government as official crime statistics. However, about 2/3 of domestic abuse incidents are categorised in this non-crime way. These are not reported within any crime statistics, and this was how my mum's case was closed. Victims who have these reports closed in this way are in essence forgotten by the system. So I dig a little bit deeper in this and sent off a few Freedom of Information Acts. And from the only force that provided any details, I found that a significant share of these non-crime incidents had markers like assault, firearms, weapons. Even of them had markers of threat to kill. So, as you can imagine, this categorization concerns me. And I do wonder how many other victims are out there that might have had their cases closed prematurely without investigation like my mum. You see, one of the constant phrases I got when I was going around various authorities was, "It's not clear what crime has been committed," or "I'm not sure what you want me to do here." And this reminded me of a classic architectural problem, and that's every team using different languages. So as system architects, we try to enforce what's known as a ubiquitous language across teams, where we try and get all teams talking in the same way. But to be honest, this rarely sticks unless we've got a very senior mandate. And obviously, I wasn't going to be in a position to sort of start insisting that government agencies all start using the same language. In my own case, when I was talking about Mum's case, I found myself constantly code switching, depending on whether I was talking to charities, clinicians, lawyers, police, or members of parliament. Everybody needed different phrasing. So I used, again, large language models to build what I call a domain dictionary. That is, mapping phrases across various agencies. Once I built this domain dictionary, that domain dictionary can then be used as a sort of a babelfish, a translator, to translate intent depending on who the audience is. So when I first asked for help and I said, I need to protect my mum, what I should have said is, I need safeguarding. Words matter. When I need various teams to work together, what I should have said is, I'm requesting a adult safeguarding referral under Section 42 of the Care Act, a domestic abuse risk assessment with MARAC consideration. And when talking to the police directly, I should have been more specific, and I should have asked for, I request a KTP attendance. You see, words matter, and particularly in instances of domestic abuse, because what you will find is victims have a tendency to underplay what is actually happening to them. And very soft sentences with the contents of domestic abuse can have very serious meanings. So I then processed Crown Prosecution Service guidance and relevant offences to get precise definitions and combined that with the case context I'd assembled. You see, once again, context is everything, and domestic abuse is usually a pattern of very small events as opposed to one big event. Now, running my mum's logs and evidence through this domain triggered a range of potential offences. Honestly, most of them I expected. Controlling and coercive behaviour, harassment, actual bodily harm, elder abuse, theft. There were a couple of surprises, even Data Protection Act breaches, for example. But there was one potential offence that even I had missed. And I do wonder if anybody spotted it here.
That sounds very difficult.
Also, by then I was going through my problems, of which he delayed my diagnosis, because every time I mentioned that I thought there was something wrong with me, he would say I was exaggerating, and I was just imagining that things were going wrong.
You see, in the UK, withholding medical attention that could have prevented death can form part of a gross negligence manslaughter case, and that is a form of homicide. And I do wonder, when I first reported my concerns and I said, my stepdad has withheld my mum's passport, what would have happened if I would have instead said, I need to report a potential homicide? Would things have been different? I often wonder how things could have been different. If victims had a place to log all their information, inform them of the rights, help them navigate this broken system, and describe the experience, would that help more of them act? Because it was lack of action which I believe caused my mum's premature death. And that's why I built a system that brings these tools together. It's with pre-built policies and workflows. It's called Linda, in honour of my mum. So, in the final months, Mum and I were constantly in hospitals, clinics, and we were being bounced around the legal system. And amid the chaos, we coined a phrase, and that is, people are great, systems are broken. I won't lie, it's been a really tough time. I've heard and personally witnessed horrible stories and behaviours, lies, isolation, and constant gaslighting. And it's been hard to stop the weight of it from being crushing. But then I do remember, for every horrible story I've got 10 stories of love and compassion. For example, one night, my mum was in an isolation space because her immune system was too low. Basically, the hospital ward had gathered, hastily emptied a storage cupboard and put her in a storage cupboard for the night. She was scared and alone, and a nurse who was on a 13-hour shift used her only 15-minute break to sit with my mum, talk to her, and get advice about travel and where she was off to. I can't stress this enough. People are great. So I think that kind of leads me to my warning about AI, is that it can make you feel superhuman. It can make you be able to do things that you cannot do on your own, you wouldn't be able to use on your own. But my caution is, just because you can do things on your own, don't. AI, it can't make you dinner when you come home shattered late from night. It can't give you a hug when you've had your 100th disappointment from a government agency. And it can't hold your hand as you watch your mum die a year and a half earlier than expected. So over the next 2 days, you're going to see amazing tools and learn powerful techniques. And my ask here is simple. When you decide to apply AI and how to apply it, think first of the who. Not just the who will use it, but who will benefit from it. And try and remember anybody that might be forgotten in this revolution. So please build so that no one is left behind. No one is forgotten. Neither the quiet heroes, vulnerable victims, or brave survivors. Thank you.